Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is, wherever you are. I am Aneesh de Vos, and we have the most wonderful, giving you a bit of a drum roll this morning, David. The most wonderful, the most fabulous, but definitely not bored, David Buckler.
Definitely not bored.
David, we had a little chat, didn't we? And I kind of pinged you in I think a voice message saying, David, I would like to talk about the art of boredom.
Yeah.
And you came back with some of your very, very funny retorts of, I hope that's not too boring and stuff like that. Your fabulous jokes. David, how are you feeling about boredom in this very busy 24/7 social media driven lifestyle that apparently we're all meant to have orgasms that are fantastic, leap off the wardrobes, we're never meant to be bored, even our water comes out of beautiful bottles and everything is glorious and we are not bored.
You're talking about the should thing? These are things we should, ought to do.
Must.
Yes, I'm a big anti-should do or ought to do. I'm a big believer in doing what you feel is necessary at the time. Absolutely. And allowing yourself to be still. It's difficult to be bored from my point of view, although I know it's quite a common state of being, especially seeing as we've been locked away for what? 15 months almost.
A long time, on and off, depending on your tiers and all things like that. But is there also not an argument for boredom that in actual fact humans do sometimes get a bit bored? And how do we sit with that? You know, kids are, what we call this helicopter parenting, and no criticism, I'm a parent and, I've done my bit of this class, that class. But in actual fact, aren't we meant to be able to sit with boredom? Is life meant to be that exciting at all times?
My theory is it's probably attached to guilt. Again, coming back to the should thing, we should be doing something at all times. We should be productive. We ought to be filling our time properly. Now, what is filling your time properly?
No idea.
Got a different take on that too. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we do all, I think, warrant and deserve some downtime, whatever that is. I guess I feel guilty about sitting there doing nothing from time to time, but it soon passes. You tell yourself, in the realms of self-care, this is okay, this is okay. I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'll absorb some meaningless television or similar. Even then I feel that I ought to be reading or should be doing something instead.
Yeah, you must fill your time. As Albert Ellis said, we need to stop masturbating, and we really should.
Oh, really?
Bit of an Albert Ellis fan. Can't imagine why. Probably his direct say it as it is. Where's going on?
Pass me by somewhere.
Well, I shall find the clip for you. So for anybody that is wondering, and I'll put it in the resources below, Albert Ellis is the father of rational emotive behaviour therapy, REBT, the cognitive therapist, back in the 1940s, 50s. And I'm a bit of a fan of his, and also because I think he's a bit naughty, or he was a bit naughty. So if we look at this idea of boredom, there seems to be a sense that, one, you shouldn't be bored, and two, people don't know what to do with boredom. I'm just thinking about general conversation that I hear, conversation within a therapeutic setting, that actually the art of boredom is lost, that people have such an expectation that everything should be jazz hands and unicorns flying down the street and la-di-da-di-da, when in actual fact, we're human and sometimes stuff is boring. Sometimes it's boring because that's life. So how do we move away a little bit from this expectation of happiness? Because can you be happy all the time? can anything be 100% of anything? There's a philosophy question, David. Could you be ponderful, please?
It certainly is something to ponder over. You know, are we ever still? I don't think the mind's ever still. Is it not during waking hours? There's all sorts
Not still
of things
during
going
sleeping
on.
hours.
Yeah, quite true, quite true.
I love
hope
it
to
when
know that.
you should know that. You're the guy that writes about it. I love it when people say, "Oh yes, I practice mindfulness," and I say, "Oh great," you know, and they say, "And I am just absolutely have no thoughts, and I just clear my mind." And I say, "Well, that's interesting because you must be dead at that point because you are constantly, the body is constantly, you know, moving, turning, and just being and living. So therefore, we can't ever be nothing."
Yeah, and I think just being is probably descriptive of not boredom, but a state of just accepting, just knowing that you're there, where you are, wherever you are. And you write. I think my mindfulness is has been interpreted in so many ways.
Don't get me started.
And I don't think it is possible to shut absolutely everything out, and unless you're probably a Buddhist monk on the top of a mountain somewhere. But
we'll leave it to the enlightened ones. We are mere mortals, and that's all I'm going to intend to be.
That's a good starting point. As a fellow mere mortal.
I don't think I can fit being anything else in the 24/7 lifestyle where I've got to be happy all the time, have fantastic orgasms, and drink the most amazing tea.
Yeah, and where are we getting these shoulds and oughts from?
All the musts.
Yeah, or musts. We're just drowning it, aren't we? Absolutely drowning it.
We are drowning it, and even though we are being particularly naughty today, this actually affects our emotional well-being. Yep. This affects our emotional well-being, that somehow we mustn't be bored, we must always be happy. I mean, the marketing around it is something else. It really is. Do you remember, was it back in the 80s or 90s, maybe the 90s, there actually was, it would have been the 90s, a DVD of watching paint dry. You know, people actually, marketing is a phenomenal tool, and people can actually market that, and lots of people bought this DVD of watching paint dry. How can that be? David, you have been quite a phenomenal business person. How can that be that somebody literally can watch something about paint drying and market it and sell it?
You've got me there. Did we really do that?
We really did it. We really did it. I always know the quirky stuff. I've got much in this brain, but I've got the weird stuff going on.
I wonder what the strap line was to this marketing ploy, that, you know, we could productively watch paint dry.
Exactly. But also, is there something to be said? Is there something to be said? Love throwing in the curveballs for you. Is there something to be said for actually learning to watch paint dry, to actually allowing ourselves to be bored, to actually just, you know, and that's away from that I'm omming on the side of the mountain and the world is fantastic. It's actually to allow ourselves and allow our kids and allow each other just to be bored. Because is there that opposite that creates appreciation of what you have? If you are permanently marketed outside of your head and beyond to the excitement of the 21st century, sorry, marketers, is there not something to be said for just, yeah, that time of, actually, this is a bit boring, and not thinking that you then have to put something right, that if I'm bored, there's something wrong with me?
I think there is something of a stigma attached to boredom means idle, means not being productive.
Yeah.
And I guess from a very early age, we're indoctrinated into this commercial world that we live in. We taught to be productive, aren't we?
Yeah, and there's some, you know, there's something wrong with you. You know, if you haven't got back to work from having a baby, and you know, I don't care if people go back to work or not. You know, that this is nothing to do with that. But as a woman, if you've had a baby, the marketing tells you, yeah, that you back in work in 6 weeks, back in your skinny jeans. I mean, there's a big thing today about somebody in the news that had a baby a couple of months ago, and she's back in her skinny jeans. Well, you know, great if she's back in her skinny jeans. Really pleased for her. You know, I had a £9.2 baby. I won't get him back in anything, I tell you. So it's just like, but you know, even that, just very much about being, you know, with your baby type thing. It's right, you've got to get back out there. Come on, get back out there. I'm exhausted thinking about it, if I'm honest.
Mm.
I mean, that's, you know, that's just one angle. That's something that I've experienced, you know, as a person that gave birth. But there are so many other things. So if we're looking at it, you know, at let's just for this moment focus at the mums having to jump back out, you know, in their skinny jeans and anything else that's going on. Whew, never mind your pelvic floor. So if we just look at that, what message does it send to the kids? To that little baby, what message does it send? That in actual fact, you just got to be up and at 'em and doing. And like I say, I am not knocking anybody going back to work, not at all. And if you want to wear your skinny jeans, great. What I'm saying is that this marketing machine, and it is a machine, it's an industrial machine of gigantic proportions, is literally infiltrated into the very fabric of being human now, that somehow it really has got to be 24/7, exciting. You've got to have this, you've got to look like that, da, 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 da. I mean, don't get me wrong, I buy into it. I'm not saying that I'm wandering around enlightened. I'm not. But I just wonder, what message does that give? You know, how many people come into therapeutic sessions feeling that there's something wrong with their life because it's not as exciting as it should be, because Twitter, TikTok, everything else is saying that in actual fact, it should be this seconds of wonderfulness. But behind the seconds of wonderfulness.
Well, you know, you're right. We are subject to a certain level of brainwashing, you know, and I always come back to the fact that, you know, we weren't designed to live like this anyway.
We weren't. We're designed to be bored.
Yeah.
We are.
When we weren't fighting wild animals off and making small people or finding food or shelter,
yeah,
there was not much in between.
No. And, you know, we went, you know, this is real hunter-gatherer stuff, isn't it? But, you know, I would argue that no, we're not really meant to be in little communities. We're actually meant to be hunter-gatherers. But of course, you know, you can't have, what are we, 7.6 billion people wandering around the earth, because people get pissy with each other and they start wars and all stuff like that. But, you know, in natural fact, that's how we're designed. That's how we're physically designed. You know, say it again, I'm a somatic worker, and people's bodies are just, they're not ready for all of the sitting that we do, etc., etc. You know, our emotional well-being is also dependent on how we use our bodies as well. It's not just that our bodies react to our emotional well-being. Our emotional well-being is also dependent on reacting to what our body is doing. So I think we've gone quite wide circle on this, David, as usual. It's why we always need a guest, because they keep us in line.
That's very true. But, you know, I guess you've just about answered the question. You know, in that, you know, in this day and age, being bored is a bit of a sin. You know, it's. I'm reminded of parents and children. You know, a common one is, how can you be bored at your age? Well, I guess you can be bored at any age, really. Yeah. And me working in education for quite a long time, it was a common state of of being for some people, and it's often heard, isn't it? Mom on board, dad on board, as though we should react with, well, go and do this, go and do that. Maybe there's a lot to be said for taking some time out to be bored.
Yeah, and just saying, oh, oh, good. Yeah, it's normal to be bored. Yeah. I'm not the magician that's going to sprinkle the unicorn dust on you so that life is always exciting, because I genuinely believe that a lot of the distress that we experience, never mind pandemics and everything else that's going on, but a lot of the distress that we experience is because we have lost the art of being bored. And our expectation is way beyond what we're humanly capable of.
I believe it's got something to do with the guilt that's attached to it, being perceived to be doing nothing.
Yeah, and that you should have, I have no idea of computer games, but every game going and every dance lesson and every music lesson. Like I say, I hold my hand up, yeah, you want to do that lesson, that's fine, yeah, I only had one child, it's fine. But I think that we should, make a bit of a movement to bring back the art of boredom. Maybe we should make a club, the Boredom Club. We could just sit there. David, you are modelling it perfectly. I just can't keep my face serious, can I?
No, I was just. Would perfecting the art of being bored be considered self-care?
You brought it round to that. I think it would be. I think it would be because, I'm always rather intrigued by the self-care industry. And I'm not going to name a certain celebrity that has candles that apparently smell like her vagina at, what are they? I think they might be $70. So, not going to go there. So for me, self-care is, actually I'm bored and I acknowledge that. Or do you know what? I feel awful today. What am I going to do? I wake up and I've got no golden ticket because I'm a therapist. I have really awful days too, and sometimes poodle on to see a therapist. But that day where you just think, I literally just don't want to do this today. I'm overwhelmed. I've been in a pandemic for however months, and I'm overwhelmed, and I'm just tired, and I just want to stay in my bed. So that could be me on a morning. Absolutely, hold my hands up. The self-care for me is, and I'm going to bring in my lovely friend Compassion. Do you know what? I really hear you, Aneesh. That little self-compassionate other that says, I really hear you. It's not surprising, is it? This is a tough, tough time. We are all going through something really collectively, and each person is going through it on their own individual level. And you feel overwhelmed today. So what are we going to do today? How about we just, for this moment, forget about your 9 o'clock start or sometimes 7 o'clock start. For this moment, get yourself out of bed, go get yourself a cup of tea. And me and my tea, my jasmine green. Go get yourself a cup of tea, sit and see how you feel in 15 minutes, half an hour. For me, that's self-care. And for sure, I have lovely bath bombs. I mean, I've called you for, I'm in the bath, or I'm out walking in beautiful landscape. But some days I can't even feel that I can get to that bit. It literally is, can we get you downstairs? Can we get this day started and see what happens with it? There's certainly no level of unicorn in that. It literally is, whew, this is my day. Okay, let's see how we can begin it. That's self-care. You're nodding, David.
Yeah, I guess what you're talking about, and there's an application of self-awareness here, isn't there? But that's another story entirely. It's, you have to be aware of yourself to recognise what's going on. To actually start some self-care in the first place.
Yes.
And I guess that's how therapists counsellors describe it is you have to take note of where you're at what point, not just in your life, but, you know, in the profession, self-care is a biggie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just thrown at you time after time.
Yeah.
We've all got different takes on it. I know when I'm due some time out, because this, if you like, the symptoms are there, you know, and they occur at random. I guess, you know, there's knowing that there's a lack of attention somewhere, might be being a little bit short, a bit snappy, with oneself, I guess, rather than anybody else. And those are signs that, yeah, I need to start taking care of myself. So I guess there's a certain amount of self-awareness attached to when you take your time out.
Yeah.
And that time out needs to be a time when you're doing nothing.
Yeah. And maybe being bored.
Or as little as possible, and being bored. Yeah. Which brings us full circle. Yeah.
If we do that, it's a chat show.
Oh, yeah.
We really shouldn't be allowed out on our own, David. We're a bit too naughty together.
There's some truth in that too. I mean, for example, this is a quiet day for me.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm going to be wondering, sort of early afternoon, what should I be doing?
Or what
am I going to allow myself to do nothing?
David, I'm going to suggest that you don't masturbate early afternoon.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I'm going to suggest that you just sit in boredom.
Yeah, or shall I just thank Mr. Ellis?
Definitely thank Mr. Ellis. Definitely thank him. He literally is my hero.
Because he's got this bad boy side to him, I'm guessing.
They are always my downfall. It's why I stay single. Do you know what? I just love things to have humour. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I listen to lots of different therapists, but you know what, if they haven't got a bit of naughtiness, I'm like, I am then bored. I listen to it because I want the information. But I must admit, I do like a little bit of excitement in my therapist that I'm learning from.
You know, as soon as we mentioned boredom, and I went on to talk about the experience of boredom in young people in education, and humour attached to that. We had, when I was in secondary school, quite a dry woodwork teacher. He did other things like technical drawing, etc.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, but his idea of punishment was to bore you to death. No, but I'm not saying he's gonna stand there and give you the most boring lecture ever. What he used to do, if he caught you doing something he didn't like, misbehaving, if you like, he'd make you go outside and count all the bricks in the building.
Right.
And he knew how many there were. So that was his punishment.
I'm not sure if they'd be allowed to do that
I think
today.
that's where I fell out with boredom. Yeah.
I think so.
Or it had a direct connection to doing something wrong.
Possibly so, possibly so.
I think he might have psychologically damaged a fair amount of people, young people, during that time.
I think there's a lot I mean, it is funny, but I think there's a lot to be said to if you're experiencing it, and don't do this at home, teachers. So David, as we kind of thought about doing a conversation, I'm still giggling, about doing a conversation about the art of boredom. And we did know that we would giggle a lot through this and perhaps misbehave slightly. But enough of my giggles. Actually, it's actually a really important point, isn't it? That being alive and being human, and well, you know, even being a cat, they don't seem to get bored though, but I'm not a cat, but is about accepting that we're going to be bored, and it's okay to be bored.
Absolutely. And now I'm thinking about my cat. I've often wondered if my cat gets bored, especially now he's on his own, bless him.
Oh, bless him. Maybe he does. Well, you know, if you look at some animals in a zoo, they consider that, you know, not going down that road because I might get a bit ranty. No. But they consider that they're bored by pacing, by, you know, showing. You know, maybe, David, and I'm just going to throw this in just as an extra curveball, maybe in actual fact, what we are presenting is this kind of distress that comes up by not doing enough. Maybe in actual fact, that is a presentation of boredom, of too much happening, that we're actually bored of too much happening. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Any psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, counsellor watching, come back, tell us what you think.
That's a very, very good point.
Oh, thank you. You bring it out in me.
Yeah, I'm going to think about that. Yeah, is boredom being overwhelmed and not being able to handle everything that's going on?
Yeah.
Is that what it looks like?
Yeah. Are we actually now bored of this?
We shut down on purpose?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to concentrate on being bored this afternoon.
Absolutely. And no masturbating. So, David, on that note...
On that note,
talk us out.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Me too. Not boring.
I hope this hasn't been too boring for everyone out there, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. We will see you again with a guest, so we'll behave ourselves then.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Bye.